Ben Goodwin, thank you so much for joining me to talk about why you call Arkansas home for our storytelling campaign, I Am Arkansas. So let's just dive right in. Ben, why do you live in Arkansas?
I was actually born and raised in Arkansas, and all of my relatives, ancestors, as far back as I can trace them, are from Arkansas.
Oh, wow. In what part of Arkansas?
All all eight of my great grandparents were born and raised in and around Boonville, Arkansas, which is in West Central Arkansas.
And is that where you grew up?
No, my that's where my parents grew up, and then I grew up in Conway.
Okay. Well, what was it like growing up in Conway? What was your childhood like?
I had just had a really great childhood. My family had a great family, had great friends, great neighbors, very active in a church community in Conway, and just felt like really part of a community all through my childhood. Going to public schools. My mom was a teacher at my elementary school, and my just felt like by the end of high school, graduating from Conway High School, I knew all the kids in the whole town. It felt like, and so yeah, I had a very nice childhood.
Am I remembering this correctly that you used to live on a farm?
Yes, I did. My wife and I had a dream to even before we were married, we had a dream to start a farm, and when we got married, that was sort of the our also aligned with our decision to go for our dream and start a farm. So our first couple years of marriage, we had a farm in Snowball, Arkansas, very close to the Buffalo River.
Oh, wow. What was that like?
It was beautiful. It was idyllic. It was just we were just felt like we were deep in nature, also kind of deep in history. We lived in a house that was built in like the 1870s, and and we could walk a little 5-minute walk down a trail and look out over the Buffalo River, which is real treasure of our state. And we could walk back and check on the flowers and vegetables we were growing. And it was really hard work. And it was it's hard to make a living doing that. But we gave it a real go, and we had a good time and a lot of fond memories of that time in our life.
Do you have one specifically, memory of that time living near the Buffalo River that stands out?
One that stands out, it was, let's see, it was probably the spring or the winter of 2009. And there was a big ice storm, and we and so we just felt like we were truly like cut off from the whole world. And our power was out. We did not have a phone other than cell phones, so our cell phones eventually died, and so we just had to keep the fire stoked and keep an eye on things. But it was also very beautiful, like the just the sort of like ice wonderland, that we were living in. And I remember walking down this dirt road, and all of the trees were sagging with the ice, the weight of the ice, and they the sun was shining off of them, and it was just like a fantasy land. And we had we didn't have a way to even take a picture of it, so I don't even have any photos of it. But and we were anyway, so we were stuck there for 3 days. But it was, we would nowhere else we'd want to be. It was amazing.
How did you feel during that time? Were you scared? Were you excited? Was it cozy? Was it thrilling? Like, what was
It was
the
it was
sentiment?
cozy and thrilling, and just felt magical, really.
Mhm.
Magical is one word. Just, I don't know, really feel fortunate in so many ways to have had experiences like that.
Did you spend a lot of time on the buffalo while you were living there?
Yeah, we sure did. We'd go, we'd work just long hours, get really hot working on the farm, and then, we'd walk down and go swim in the buffalo to cool down. And we had two dogs, and they just kind of insisted we go down there a lot, because they were hot too. And we could, there were just multiple places there. If we got in the truck, we could drive to and see, see amazing things. So yeah, we spent a lot of time in the buffalo, and I got to kind of never understood its rhythms, but got to really see the rhythms of it, like how high the water can get, and then how low it can get, and how it doesn't seem to correspond to the rainfall. That was something that stood out.
Oh, wow.
For big rain like we've had here, I'd think, oh man, I'm sure the river's roaring, but it wouldn't be.
Mm.
But 2 weeks later, it would, So it's kind of has its own mysteries. It feels like.
Wow. What's the thing you miss most about living up there?
It's just so peaceful. It's very, peaceful. I remember you, you might not see a person all day. And if you did see a person who drove past our road, they'd always be friendly. That was something. There's just kind of a culture in that part of the state of, you might not see anybody all day. When you do, you take a minute to say hi to them. I remember the mailman did come every day, and he was real friendly and stopped to chat like every day. And so it's peaceful. It's gentle. It was beautiful.
That's very cool. So after that time in your life, you moved to Little Rock?
That's right. Yep.
Mhm.
Lived in Little Rock since 2009. That's when we moved from the farm to Little
And
Rock.
why Little Rock? Why that city in this state?
Well, I don't know. Have you heard this story of mine? But it's a story I've worked up and done mainly in writing in a storytelling workshop. But I kind of don't want to go into all of it here. But the short version is that we sort of had to slam on the brakes on our farm life because our daughter was born
Mhm.
really early.
Mm.
We got pregnant with our first child on the farm. We were really excited about that. And then unfortunately went into labor at 24 weeks.
Oh,
And
wow. Mhm.
so Ruby was needed to be in Children's Hospital in Little Rock for about her first 6 months of life, and just had a lot of challenges, a lot of scary times,
Mhm.
really traumatic, honestly,
Mhm.
time in our lives. Um, in many ways, the number one way, of course, is just concern for our daughter and, you know, if she would survive or what her survival would look like. But also the sort of trauma of just our lives being uprooted so
Mhm.
suddenly. And but that was exactly the time that so we moved to Little Rock and we didn't have any money. We had kind of lost all our money on the farm basically, and um, we also didn't have. Well, that's not quite true. I don't know if you care about this, but I was like a remote worker before it was cool, so I like wrote grants remotely up at the farm, and so that's how I made the money, and then spent it all on the farm. And so I could still do a little of that, but once it kind of we started seeing the writing on the wall, we're going to need to be close to children's even when Ruby gets out of here. Um, Started thinking about what could we do in Little Rock, and got some outreach from the executive director of our house, who I'd known before, and I'd actually I'd volunteered at our house before. I'd written a couple of grants for them for free, just as kind of a service to the community, and so she knew what I could do, and said, "Hey, I know what you're going through. We can, you can work part time. We can be flexible, but I could use your help figuring out how to, write grants, raise money, but also write, or I mean, also start tracking the outcomes of our work, you know, like a
Mm.
performance measurement in a more kind of intentional way.
Mhm.
And so I said, sure, we'll do that. And it really kind of bonded me with the mission of our house in a few ways. One, just the way I was treated as, you know, going through a hard time and everybody being really understanding of that. And then also, you know, the way I connected to the, you know, just a glimmer of what our clients go through,
Mhm.
who also have traumatic circumstances and also have, you know, just kind of like the uncertainty of knowing if their kids are going to be okay and feeling
Mhm.
helpless, not knowing how to solve that problem, and also relying on the support of others, you know, that
Mhm.
community that I mentioned in my childhood. I still relied on that a lot, you know, and people, especially during this hard time, like people helped us in all kinds of ways. We stayed on people's couches. This one couple gave us use of their apartment while they were out of town for like a month, which was great. People from back at the farm would go check on our farm, you know, for us and bring us vegetables from our farm and things like that when they came to Little Rock. And so, anyway, that you know, I kind of the sort of spark of my really deciding to go deep with our house was like, hey, you know, I want to be able to in a at scale in a sort of, you know, thoughtful way be that support network for other families going through similar things. And our house was already doing that, but I knew we could do so much more. And
Mhm.
Georgia, my predecessor who hired me, is a real visionary and, you know, real go-getter and wanted to just, you know, do it as big and as well as it could be done. And I was right there with her. And so anyway, that's the story of how I came to our house.
Do you feel, thank you for sharing that. That's a really cool story. Do you feel like your experiences both at Arkansas Children's with all of the community support you had, as well as the work that our house does in the community is indicative of Arkansans? Is it indicative of place? Do you feel like that's a special part of this place?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, there's people that we already had connections with that helped us during that time, and there's also people that stepped up to help us without even knowing who we were
Mhm.
and are still an important part of our lives, including like Ruby's nurses at Children's. And my wife went on to become a nurse. And so she went
Oh,
to
cool.
nursing school and now she's a nurse and she's worked at Children's before. So in the NICU, and so she kind of got that out of her system. But now she is the nurse at our kids at our son's elementary school.
Mhm.
And so you know, speaking of community, now like both my kids walk to school every morning, and so does my wife. And we live, you know, 1 mile from Children's Hospital and
Mm.
1/4 mile from our school kids' school, and about you know 3 miles from our house. And but anyway, yes, those connections are there, and this is like Nurses Appreciation Week or Day, and so there's a lot of love shared back and forth between,
Mhm.
you know, Elizabeth, my wife, who's a nurse now, and then Ruby's nurses from, you know, 14
Mhm.
years now. Um,
Wow, she's 14.
yeah, she's about to turn 14 this month, and yeah, she's doing great. You know, she's a real smart and sweet and kind kid who's doing great things, very creative, and very funny, and she's doing well in school, and she still has you know a few things that she needs to go to Children's for, and we were there this week, you know, and I don't know, it's yeah, so that's sort of part of our community still. I mean,
Well, I'm going to ask you, what are the things, well, let me rewind. Have you ever thought about moving out of Arkansas?
yes, and we may do it someday, but you don't have to put that
Okay.
in the
What
quote. But
keeps you in Arkansas?
my
Yeah.
wife is was born in Arkansas, but she lived all over the world growing up. She lived in Alaska and Singapore.
Mm,
and traveled all over the world. And then her family kept traveling and lived in Egypt and Russia
wow.
um, and just anyway, so that's sort of part of her, who she is in a way that I feel like we at some point we're going to need to honor and
Sure.
invest in.
Yeah.
And I've kept her, like she's happier too, but I've kind of sort of kept her here for a long time. And I think at some point we'll need to scratch that itch and travel the
Yeah.
world a little more.
What, last question. What do you love about Arkansas?
I love about Arkansas. I love this feeling of like scale. I like the scale of Arkansas. I feel like it's the right size in terms of like the um the community, I guess. Like even now here in Little Rock, which is so much bigger than Conway, I feel like I know a pretty decent chunk of the people that I need to know, and if something comes up like the tornado a few
Mhm.
weeks ago, you know, I um I knew people were affected by that, of course, I think we all did. And then we knew people that we could, call on for help, to get help to the people who needed it. And we knew ways we could do that. It's because we had those connections already and we were the right sort of scale to do that. And like another example would be the work we do at our house, I'm all about getting bigger because I just see the need every day for
Mhm.
more served, more families that need our help than we can currently serve. And so the whole 14 years I've been at our house have been, that's been sort of the story. Like, how can we get bigger?
Mhm.
How can we get better? But I think if we, I think we're getting to the scale, and I think it's possible for us to get to scale where we really can sort of make a community level difference, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
We're working one family at a time, um, and I like that. But we're also, you know, we could possibly really get our hands wrapped around this thing, not just our house itself, but working in partnership and connections with others in the community.
Mhm.
And at our house, I get to see the generosity and the sort of community spirit of Arkansas probably more than most. And I'm always kind of encouraged by that. People, from all different walks of life, from all different sides of like political, you know, differences and things like that, still really do invest their time and energy and their money and their goodwill to help others in their community, including people they don't know. And so I feel pretty privileged in my role here at our house to just sort of be able to witness that and be a steward of that, to kind of connect the genuine community mindedness of all kinds of people and channel that into a way that they can actually help people in need.
Very cool. Well, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about why you call Arkansas home.
Of course. Yeah, it's great to have the chance to do so.